Hi, this is Tony Bible, author of The Photo Jumper, and you are listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. In the beginning of Chapter 45, the PCs wrestle with the revelation that the person who cast the illusion of the giant talking fireball is not Odok Zygog. They are actually his librarian and caretaker of the Seclusium. Furthermore, Zygog is not even here. He's been away for 2 years on a quest to walk the Golden Path, and he is not expected to return anytime soon. The librarian, we learn, is a gnome named Nachu. She's very knowledgeable and helps the PCs locate the entrance to the Golden Path on the map of the region they took from Duroth. She also sheds some light on Zygog's personality. According to Nachu, the recluse is simply not the kind of person who would have attacked Aldve, and is very unlikely to be the one who turned him to stone. More probably, the gnome opines, Achilles Vapi wrote his name down because Zygog is the one most able to help. The decision is made to rest and heal, and then, when they are better prepared, to venture out in search of Mirror Lake, where they hope to find the entrance to the Golden Path, and eventually, Nachu's master. Before they can get to Mirror Lake, however, they'll need to navigate the dangerous Crystalwood. Nachu estimates that the journey will take the PCs about 3 days. I think that, encumbered by his new plate mail armor, Fairwind will slow the group down some. They're also carrying a lot in the way of provisions. Way back in episode 5, I set the daily average travel distance at 12 miles a day, so I'll adjust that to 10. Still, at this point in the adventure, it's not such an impactful change. More important is the days to destination counter. That destination is, of course, Mirror Lake, where the PCs expect to find the entrance to the Golden Path. To get there, again, according to Nachu, they'll need to pass through the Crystalwood, pass by Greyside Mountain, and cross an unnamed river. That's 3 geographic features, 3 days. I like the simplicity of this arrangement. The first location is the Crystalwood. I don't know what that is or how it got its name, but I do have this Disrupt Nature event meeting in the bank, so maybe I can use that. I don't need to figure that place out just yet though. I've got hex crawl rolls to make first. A quick note before we begin that I'm going back to my usual practice of removing Cord's Locate Plants and Animals and Create Water spells as a matter of course. Okay, let's start with weather. You know, it feels good to get back to these rolls. Here we go. I've got a 5. It's windy, and travel is immediately difficult. It won't affect their progress in terms of distance, but moods will be low as a result. Next up is Stumble Upon. A 12 means no result. Foraging gets a D6, and a 1 to 3 will indicate success. The roll. A 1. Oh, that's good news. I'll make a note to include that in the narrative. And finally, a chance for a wandering encounter. Rolling that D6 again, and hoping to see anything other than a 5 or 6. I see. Chapter 46, Part 1. Day 40. 3 days from their destination. Afternoon. Mythic event meaning. Disrupt nature. Party status. Achillea, 15 of 15 hit points. Cord, 29 of 29. Dureni, 18 of 19. Tentir, 28 of 28. Fairwind, 31 of 33. Flicker, 16 of 16. Supplies, The companions have 20 portions of food. Spells available. Achillea can cast Shrink, Enlarge, Detect Evil, Glitter Dust, and Dispel Magic. Cord can cast Entangle, Slow Poison, Hold Animal, Speak with Plants, Tree Shape, and Pass Plant. Fairwind can cast Hold Person. Despite the rest and plentiful, if not flavorful, food they'd enjoyed over the past few days, the companions became quickly fatigued as they walked northeast into a headwind that would not relent.
At least it's not raining,
said Durrani miserably, pulling his flapping cloak closed and holding it tightly at his breast. The elf's dark hair blew back wildly in a sudden gust, but with his usual stoicism, Durrani pushed ahead, leading the way for the others. That was about the extent of the conversation among the members of the group, unless Fairwind's frequent muttered complaints countered his talk. For the most part, they kept their own counsel. Achillea was absorbed in doubts that had nagged at her ever since their conversation with Nachu at the dining table. She could hear the gnome's voice in her head, asking,
"What if your master Aldvay didn't want you to find the man who hurt him? What if he wanted you to find the only man who could help him?"
It forced her to reimagine the circumstances that led to Aldvay being turned to stone. She had pictured it many times, always with Aldvay being surprised, forced to crouch down on the ground in submission, where he secretly scratched his attacker's name into the dirt before being petrified by magic and having his spellbook stolen. If she were honest, finding out that this was probably not how things had happened made her feel worse. She'd been hanging on to this simple and somewhat childish version of events because in her mind they were actionable. The realization that the truth was something she might never learn, something she could not respond to, that felt truly bad. Achillea remembered something else Nachu had said about Odog-Zygog.
Master Zygog would never have done that, though. He is a pacifist through and through. He abhors violence of any kind.
She had to come to terms with it. Her version of events did not really add up. They never really had. Aldvay's position on the floor seemed quite deliberate, and his face neither had the look of submission nor defiance. The Oak Man had never intervened either. Of course, the detonation of the protective glyph on Aldvay's spellbook and the book's theft did support the theory of a burglar. If Odog-Zygog had not been that burglar, who in Marith had been? Chapter 46, Part 2, Day 40, Afternoon. Bellario scratched at his side with the cuts and burns that healed, but left a scarred and itchy patch of skin on his flank. It had been worth it, though. The spellbook he'd managed to swipe was exceptional, the best he had ever stolen in his life. He looked at the silver ring on his finger with the black and gold striped gem set into it and smiled wistfully. Other than the explosive glyph trap, it had all been so easy. Over the past week, he had learned much from the stolen tome, and he expected to learn much more in the future, but there was no time to study it now. He'd been working on the second scroll of Gallandal most of the night and through the morning, because recently he'd had a minor breakthrough. He now felt that he was very, very close to finding what he sought. Absently pushing aside his breakfast, a bowl of boiled onions, something in the text caught his eye. There it was, hiding in plain sight, the key that had unlocked the final passages. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve and redoubled his concentration. He read the passage once, twice, and a third time. Yes, this was it. He skipped ahead to the final section and began to hunt through the dense text. What had once seemed like nonsense was now clear. The place he was looking for had a name, and now he knew it. Mirror Lake. All Bellario had to do was find its location. Chapter 46, Part 3, Day 40, 3 days from their destination. Early evening. Mythic event meaning. Disrupt nature. Party status. The party status is unchanged. the gusting wind was not the companions' only adversary during the day's trek. The terrain itself made the journey wearisome. While the grasslands were easy to foot, they inclined endlessly up, ever up, towards the looming mountains, which, while they grew larger and larger, never really seemed to get closer. The only reprieve to their hardship came in the late afternoon when Doreni spied the telltale purple flowers denoting burdock. The plants were pulled, and their roots were harvested and washed with spring water magically produced by cord. The meal marked the only true rest they'd taken all day. After their repast, the companions resumed the difficult journey northeast and, after a few hours, came into sight of a forest. It lay cloaked in a heavy dimming hush, the uttermost pines dark and tall, with their needles undulating in the wind.
Given how far we've traveled today, I believe we've found the Crystalwood,
Fairwind observed.
It looks just like any other woods.
Muttered Achillia.
I wonder where the name comes from.
I believe it was originally named by the elves, and then translated into what we now call Old Zacian. At least, this is what the scroll implies. I managed to study it at some length during our stay with Nachu, you know.
Achillia communicated this bit of information to the elven brothers, who glanced at the woods and shrugged.
All of the places we might expect to pass on our journey, not only the Crystalwood, but Greyside Mountain and Mirror Lake, too, are mentioned in the scroll,
continued Fairwind.
Perhaps we didn't even need Nachu's help,
mused Achillia.
No, we absolutely did,
was the cleric's quick reply.
While the places we hope to find are listed in the scroll, so are hundreds of others. What's more, we only have the one scroll, and trying to decipher it is it's like trying to read a book with every other page torn out. Worse, actually, since there's no pattern or regularity to the gaps of information.
Fairwind, did the scroll make any mention of?
Of the bloom? Unfortunately, no.
Before long, the party had reached the tree line. By now, the sun was hanging low in the west and coloring the mountaintops a fiery orange. Before they entered the woods, a final gust of wind lashed the companions. Didn't it seem like wind and rain always came hardest in the moments before one reached shelter, as though it wanted to punish them? Heads down, the party members pushed through it, and soon they were in the forest's embrace, where the wind could not reach them. Still, knowing that there was something bad ahead, this bloom, whatever it was, they were little comforted. At the top of the episode, I made a bunch of hex crawl rolls, one of which was for a wandering encounter. I got a 5 on that roll, indicating that there will be one. Off mic, I rolled a high-low to see if the encounter would happen before or after they reached the Crystalwood, and I found out it would happen after they reached it. In other words, the encounter will take place in the Crystalwood. There's no need to use a random table to find out what kind of encounter it will be. All things point to a run-in with the bloom. But what is the bloom? I have no idea. I just thought it was a cool-sounding name when I first brought it up. I think what's called for now is a search for an appropriate monster. I've got my Fiend Folio here and my monster manuals, as well as a few other resources. If you can hang tight, I'll go away and do that now. Alright, I've done some reading and I just can't find anything that's going to work in this situation. There are plenty of monsters that have some elements I'm looking for, but nothing really fits the bill as is. I'm going to surprise no one when I say a custom creature is in order, but here's a thought. My usual modus operandi is to go away and come back with the work done. What if, instead, I made this monster on mic, sharing the thought process as I go? Would that be interesting to listen to? Maybe? Let's give it a go. Between the lines. The bloom. All right, the Monster Workshop is open for business. We'll start with some baseline information. Firstly, due to the relative proximity of the Crystalwood to the Golden Path and all that lies beyond, it's a region that's infused with the kind of wild magical essence. Therefore, the monster we make here can and should be something unusual, fantastic, and probably horrific. Secondly, the monster needs to be mobile. If the bloom is worth warning the PCs about, it can't be something easily avoided, and since we already know there will be an encounter, it would be cheesy to have the PCs just accidentally wander across it. With these decisions made, the next step is to enumerate the elements that I like and dislike from monsters I passed on. Here's my rejection rundown. Candidate A, the Shambling Mound. A cool, classic monster I would like to use, but will not. Mostly because they are essentially big bags of hit points with a very high AC. A fight with one of these would be a long and drawn-out blow for blow, and we've already had 2 of this kind of encounter recently with the animated armor and the giant forest troll before that, so no good. Candidate B, the Basidirond. This one, found in the Monster Manual 2, has an interesting special attack involving hallucination-inducing spores. There's even a corresponding chart with some pretty evocative visions. I can see this kind of thing working well in the audio medium. However, I'm not very excited about the look and nature of this one. A funnel-shaped mushroom thing is not what I had in mind. Candidates C, D, and E, the Bloodthorn, Choke Creeper, and Hangman Tree. These monsters all have a multi-attack with vines or tendrils that need to be hacked away before the main body of the creature can be defeated or else to drive it off. In a way, they are kind of like the plant version of a Hydra. I really like that. These creatures are very close to what I have in mind, except that they move very slowly, or not at all, which I've already mentioned is a problem. But I have an idea to solve for this. I was thinking about Cord's new spell, Pass Plant, which is like Dimension Door using trees, and I thought, what if the Bloom had this spell as an always-on type of special ability? It could essentially make attacks anywhere in the Crystalwood, while keeping its vulnerable main body hidden. In addition to the vine attacks, the Bloom will have a secondary special attack using hallucinogenic pollen. Perhaps it has 2 types of tendrils, thorny attack tendrils and flower-covered pollen tendrils. Alright, I think it's time to stat up this custom creature, and as we go, I hope you'll forgive me if I pour a big bucket of weird on top of it. Okay, with all that said, Tale of the Manticore proudly presents the Bloom. Armor class 15. Hit dice 5 hit points per tendril, 1 hit point for the main body. Move, see below. Number of attacks 10. Damage 1 to 6, and see below. Number appearing 1. Save as Fighter level 10. Morale is equal to the number of remaining tendrils times 2. The Bloom is a unique magical creature that exists in, and in some ways is part of, the Crystalwood. It's composed of a delicate body and 10 vine-like tendrils. The body is extremely delicate, so vulnerable that it has no armor class and can sustain only a single point of damage before being destroyed. It resembles a membranous sac with luminescent flecks floating around in the fluid inside. This sac is buried a foot underground and would be almost impossible to find were it not for the enormous flowers, bone white, stippled with light blue, that grow above ground overtop it. These flowers are most strange to look upon, for in addition to their enormous size, with each flower being 1 to 3 feet in diameter, each has, in its center, a rolling eyeball, ranging from acorn to fist-sized. Despite the presence of telltale blossoms growing above its body, unless one knew where to look, the Bloom would be extremely difficult to locate. This is because the Crystalwood is large, covering a space of approximately 10 square miles. The Bloom can cast a version of the druidic spell Pass Plant at will. Although the main body cannot move, using this power, it may cause its tendrils to appear anywhere in the Crystalwood at any time. The Bloom has 10 tendrils that come in 2 types. 8 are thick and thorn-covered. They lash, bludgeon, and tear at their opponents, each one striking with the force of a mace for 1 to 6 points of damage. The other 2 tendrils are covered in white blossoms patterned with light blue. Each blossom has an eye, the size of a human eye, at its center. These tendrils have no physical attack, but they can puff out a small cloud of pollen at a single opponent each round. This pollen will, if the victim fails a saving throw versus poison, cause them to hallucinate. Both types of tendrils have a high armor class of 15 due to their speed, because they can attack from any direction, then withdraw and reappear from somewhere else. Tendrils of either variety have 5 hit points. The Bloom attacks by shooting all of its tendrils at once, and all from different directions. For each tendril still intact, the Bloom attacks with a +1. Therefore, in the first round of combat, it has +10 to hit. For each tendril that's destroyed, this bonus is reduced by 1 point. When it's lost its 5th tendril, the bloom will begin making morale checks and will continue to do so every time another tendril is destroyed. Morale checks are made by counting the number of remaining tendrils and multiplying that number by 2. The bloom can regrow severed tendrils at a rate of 1 per day. The bloom cannot be surprised except by invisible creatures. The hallucinatory effects produced by the bloom's pollen are the same as those caused by the Pasiderant. I'll post the table on my blog along with this full monster write-up. Effects last 1 to 4 rounds. Finally, once a person has suffered a hallucination, they are immune to the effects of the bloom's pollen for 1 full day. I just realized I need to make one more roll before I can return to the narrative. It's not a reaction roll. I'm not going to make one of those, since the bloom is such an aggressive predator, and it's not a roll to see if the PCs stumble across the bloom's main body. While it's technically possible, the chance would be infinitesimally small. No, the roll I need to make is for surprise, and only on the side of the PCs, as the bloom cannot be surprised. On a D6, a 1 or 2 is bad news. Here we go. Dang it, that's a 1. Oh, and there's one more thing. In the break I took between writing up the bloom and sitting back down to the keyboard, it occurred to me that I forgot to include something back in episode 42. I've been writing Achilles' poem, The Song of the Woods, in stages, and I decided at some point to add a verse every 13 episodes. I forgot to do the last one, and that's a shame, but it's not the end of the world. Maybe I could work it into the narrative now. Chapter 46, Part 4, Day 40, 3 days from their destination. Evening. Mythic event meaning, disrupt nature. Party status. The party's status is unchanged. The last light of the sun was fading away, leaving only a faint, burnished glow in the treetops, while the woods below began to sink into shadow. By mutual, unspoken accord, Achillia and Fairwind had ended their conversation shortly after entering the Crystalwood. Achillia couldn't decide if there was something actually ominous about the place, or if it was just her mind that made it seem so because of the warning they'd been given. In any case, silence, apart from the sounds of birdsong and their footfalls, seemed appropriate for a place like this. After a few miles, she began to wonder how the wood had gotten its name. There was nothing apparent to explain it, nothing of the forest that spoke of crystals at all. However, it did have a dark beauty, she thought. As her boots trod over springy moss and fallen leaves, a couplet from the poem she'd been working on came to mind.
A darkling sky, a mossy bed, where dangers of the wild reside, she
recited to herself. Perhaps a place like this could inspire the next stanza. The fourth had eluded her for some time. Besides, thinking about her poem would take her mind off the present and help to allay her fear. The third stanza had finished thus.
The fox and fawn in silence hide, and twilight shows the path ahead. Here toadstools ring a secret glade, where fey lights flicker, soft and low, and time forgets which way to go. Spells are spoken, and dreams are made.
Although she did not notice it, and neither did any of her companions, as the party made their way deeper into the Crystalwood, eyes appeared in knotholes behind the concealment of ferns and bushes, staring from between tangles of bendy branches, and from the cavities in fallen dead trees. Somehow, the eyes followed them as they walked, watching them, studying them. In her mind, Achillia played with various combinations of words and phrases, selecting and rejecting them on the basis of how many syllables they contained and where their stress lay. It was a kind of intellectual and artistic puzzle that felt satisfying and good, especially when she happened upon a notion that really captured a feeling or described something well. The ideas flowed, and eventually she had her fourth stanza, but she had only just come up with the final line and was almost completely lost in thought when Dureni, leading the group, called a sudden halt.
Something's wrong,
said the elf in a tight voice, moving his hand towards the hilt of his sheathed sword.
What's happening?
Asked Fairwind, not understanding Dureni's words, but fully comprehending the elf's meaning anyway.
The birds, they have stopped singing.
Dureni was right. The woods had grown truly silent. When exactly had that happened? but there was no time to consider the answer, because at that moment, the woods around them exploded with movement as the companions were attacked from every side. Thank you for listening to Tale of the Manticore. If you'd like to help to support the show, you can recommend or like and repost episode announcements on social media. You can purchase a Tale of the Manticore t-shirt at beararts.store or one of my offerings on DriveThruRPG. And of course, you can rate and review the show on your favorite podcatcher. If you happen to listen to the show on Spreaker, you can join the support club for $2 a month. Members now get ad-free content. I am super grateful to everyone who supports the show. At this time, I'd love to share a listener review. This one was left on Apple Podcasts by Delphon Nofled. Delphon writes, "Amazing. I've binge-listened to the first and second season in their entirety. You do an astounding job bringing all these characters to life. Love when you pause to pull back the curtain and explain your DM side." Thanks very much, Delphon. Your handle is so unique that I thought, oh, that must be something. Googled it and nothing came up, but then I noticed it's a palindrome. Yes, I solved your username puzzle. Can I roll on a random treasure table now? Anyway, I really appreciate the review, and I hope you'll listen to this third season too. At this point, I'd like to thank this episode's excellent cast of voice actors. I'd be lost without them. Duretti and Fairwind are played by core cast members Kylan and Dave Cooper, as always. There's also the remembered voice of Nachu by Amanda T. Thanks very much, Kylan, Dave, and Amanda. Another special and huge thank you goes out to the incredible Friendly Mike, who's drawn a mind-blowing illustration of The Bloom. It'll be up on the blog shortly after this episode airs. Of course, there's a bunch of other stuff on the blog for the curious listener, like maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.com. As usual, you can find me at soloroleplayersnetwork.com, taleofthemanticore.bluesky.social, Tale of the Manticore podcast on Instagram, and taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore. It's the story where chaos rolls.